Regular board meeting for the governing board of trustees for Romoland School District is called to order at 5:30 p.m. Roll call. Mr. Reller.
Here.
Ms. White.
Here.
Mr. Sperry.
Here.
Myself, Mr. Gary is here. Ms. Moon will be joining us later. Do we have any public comments for closed session?
No, we do not.
Closed session is called at 5:30 p.m. to discuss public employee dismissal, discipline, releases, negotiation, superintendent evaluation, public employee employment, and conference for labor negotiators. Regular board meeting of the Romoland School District has reconvened at 6:36 PM. Was there any actions taken in closed session?
There's no action taken in closed session.
We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Governance norms, we agree to act with dignity, respect differences, build trust, work as a team, engage the public, focus on the success of every student, and work together for the common good. I'll go over to the communications, governing board, and superintendent. First one, Mr. Reller.
Yes, I just want to highlight a few things that have been reported to us. One of those in particular is our Taste of California Standardized Recipe Challenge. We got a grant of $8,500. So that's some great work. Also, the nutrition services recognition, all those meals that we have been serving, 545,255, and we were recognized in a magazine. One of the things that are very good about Romoland Elementary School District is our induction program for our new teachers. We have had five candidates this year have went through our induction program. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, that we're continuing our testing opportunities, COVID testing opportunities, and they are quite low, but we're still giving people that opportunity to test for COVID-19. Again, we got another award, Model SARB. We were recognized for that as well. Again, Medi-Cal billing reimbursement, $85,000 back to the school district. That is a task for our staff. It is something that is not easy. It's boring. It's a lot of detail and knowing what is reimbursable and what's not. So our staff that are filling out all that paperwork and that are doing that is needs to be credited with getting us back that reimbursement. Also, it's great to hear that the federal government is expanding its universal feeding to the end of 2021-22. And I would assume that means that all of our kids eat for free every day. So that will, I think, be much easier on our cafeteria staff next year when we're back in person. The kids, I don't even know if they'll have to put in ID numbers. So that just streamlines that process and gets our kids that food pretty darn quick. And I'd like to finish by saying again, thank you to the staff for all the work that they're doing in getting our kids back to in-person instruction. I want to highlight, lastly, Menifee 24/7 gave us some good press, and I really do appreciate our press releases that get out there. And they highlighted us as Romoland School District increases in-person days to 4 per week. Parents are very, very happy about that press release and the press that we got. And also our Harvest Valley Elementary Counseling Program was recognized in Menifee 24/7. It's always nice to have Romoland to shine in Menifee 24/7. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reller. Mrs. Moon?
Well, I think that Mr. Reller covered most of
You're
it.
muted.
So, I shouldn't be. Can you hear me now? Hello?
We got you now, Debbie. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I was saying that Mr. Reller did such a nice job covering everything. I did want to congratulate Harvest Valley, and also all the students going back 4 days a week. And in more exciting news, the music program has resumed. So that is also exciting. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Mrs. Kleitz?
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Reller for that update on everything. We read it and we don't think enough to really seriously acknowledge it during our board meetings. And so thank you for bringing that forward. That's awesome. I would just like to also thank that we're still doing COVID testing, even though our numbers are low. I'm still glad it's accessible, to our parents and our staff and everything there. And I'm so glad to be 4 days a week here in Romoland. I've been getting calls even from other districts saying, wow, you guys are at 4 days. I go, yeah, you wish you were us, right? Anyway, congratulations to the staff and getting us going.
You, Mr. Stern?
Yeah, I'm just happy to, to reiterate all that went on with following Mr. Rell and Ms. Kleitz, and being back to school for the 4 days is wonderful. And there's a lot of sympathy that went out for those parents that have been struggling with this for the past year, and our students that have struggled, and everything that has gone on. It's a great relief, I imagine, to those parents. A lot of people suffered one way or another throughout this entire process that we've been going through. And in many, many ways, it just highlights how important it is that we have our teachers in our classrooms, our students in our classrooms, and just really how important it is, besides the education that goes on, just everything else. And really appreciate everyone's effort and going back and helping out. Thank you.
Thank you. Myself, likewise, I'd like to thank Mr. Reller for highlighting all those great things that we do as a district, and thank the staff, for the tremendous work that they do. Just glad that everything's starting to seem like it's going back to normal. So, and then want to wish all the mothers a happy Mother's Day as well. But thank you, Mr. Payton.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. So my conversation is around the return to the full day, 4-day school week that started on May 3rd. I appreciate the collaboration with our bargaining units and support of that return to get students back in school. Feedback from the school sites has been that it was a smooth transition, mainly because we developed our protocols when we were bringing kids in 2 days a week. And so they kind of got those ironed out. And so it was just really a smooth transition to 4 days a week. And I'm happy to report that, we haven't, and I'm going to knock on wood when I say this too, we really haven't seen an increase in COVID cases or anything like that as a result of the 4-day a week schedule. And a couple of board members touched on the testing that's available. And that's really important to prevent spreading, because if students have symptoms or adults have symptoms, if you've read the symptom list, it may not be COVID, right? It could be a lot of things, right? And so overwhelmingly, those tests come back negative, but we do offer tests to anybody with symptoms. And that's a good thing for our district. The second thing is we're in the middle of Staff Appreciation Week this week. I know last week was technically Certificated Appreciation Week in our district. We have made the decision to celebrate the week in between certificated and classified, because we celebrate our staff together because everybody contributes in our district. And so I believe staff was greeted with a little treat this morning from the district office. And then our outstanding nutrition services department has created a luncheon for them, but it's grab and go, so we don't congregate for Thursday. So we can't quite celebrate in the way we normally do, which is together, but we still wanted to honor everyone's contribution to the district. And so we'll be doing that Thursday as well.
Thank you. We'll move on to recognitions and announcements for student recognition. Dr. Wise?
Good evening, board. So it is our pleasure to celebrate the following students. From Boulder Ridge Elementary, our students of the month for May are Victoria Estrada Aguirre, grade 4, and Crystal Carrillo Martinez, grade 3. From Harvest Valley Elementary School, Esteban Ramirez, grade 5, and Jaden Leon, grade 5. From Mesa View Elementary, Marvin Galindo, grade 3, and Nathan Bravo, grade 5. From Romoland Elementary, Ashton Cortes, grade 5, and Scarlett Arvizo, grade 5. And from Ethan A. Chase Middle School, Samuel Adzakpa, grade 8, and Vanessa Villagomez, grade 7. Congratulations to all students.
Do you have any public comments for the association report?
No, we do not.
We move on now to the information items. Faculty update or facility updates. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre, members of the board, Superintendent Payton, and Cabinet. Last August, the board approved a facilities master plan, which included some maintenance projects. And so tonight I'm going to talk about some of those projects that we're looking at, as well as providing some updates on the Harvest Valley portables, as well as Boulder Ridge portables that we discussed at the February board study session on future facilities needs. What we did is we went around and took some pictures just to illustrate what we want to work on. One of the first item here is at Boulder Ridge Elementary. We're looking to paint the school. Over time, the paint is worn out and there's been some cracks and other damage to various areas of the paint at the school site. And so our estimated cost for that is around $275,000. And we'd like to utilize the routine restricted maintenance account to pay for that. Also at Boulder Ridge, the roofing, although the roofing is the total lifespan of the roofing could be up to 20 years. The roof is now 16 years old. And at this point, it would make more sense financially to do a complete roofing replacement, as patchwork replacement over time isn't going to get us to where we need to be to keep the school in good condition and make sure that we're not having leaks or any other things going on there. The estimated cost for that throughout the school is $320,000. And we'd like to utilize the LCAP funds for that and under the guise of providing physically safe and well-maintained facilities for all students. Also at Boulder Ridge is the last school site that we have that isn't on an energy management system. And this system allows us to monitor the HVAC system at the school site. And we've installed these at other school sites and we saw savings during the summer months, especially as the classrooms get very hot, the air conditioner runs all day despite no teachers being in them during the summertime. And so we did see significant savings over those months when it was hot at other school sites where we put them in on the order of 29% or so. And we're fortunate enough to be able to utilize some of our one-time ESSER dollars to pay for this program, so it won't have a direct impact on the general fund. The ESSER funds are able to be used for filtration monitoring, and that's one of the features of this system is that the maintenance department will be able to monitor the level of filtration that's happening in the system and make adjustments to make replacements to the filters as we need to. So it's a nice $200,000 that we're able to not impact the general fund with. And then potentially looking at paint at Ethan A. Chase. You can see there from some of the pictures, there's some spots throughout the school site where the paint looks like it's melting almost. So that was one of the things that we were looking at, repairing the damages and redoing the paint at that school site. We're estimating that to cost about $300,000, utilizing the routine restricted maintenance account. Then over at Harvest Valley, the blacktop on the basketball court has reached a point where it can no longer just be slurry sealed and restriped. It needs to be ground up and replaced. And then the front parking lot is still in a condition where it could just be slurried and restriped. So we're looking to do those two items. We're estimating that to cost about $73,000. Also at a LCAP under the facilities in well-maintained facilities for all students. Safe.
I have a question.
Yes.
And not sure if you know, because you weren't here, but didn't we just, and I'm not talking about the parking lot, but didn't we just redo that entire blacktop area, the basketball court, Mr. Payton?
Well, there's a couple of locations where basketball courts are.
Okay,
So these would be right off of the parking lot, at the end of the row of portables near the front of the school. There's a bike rack
the
there.
front of the school.
Yeah, there's a bike rack there right outside of a classroom, and there's some basketball courts there, and that blacktop has been untouched. And that's
Okay.
really what we're
That
talking
was-
about.
That was my question.
That we did a few years ago? Yeah, no, that's all good. That's all good. This was an untouched area from that project.
And going over to Mesa View, their carpets throughout the school site, the carpets are getting into quite a rough shape. The carpets are from 2007, and although staff has done a good job keeping them in good shape, the older the carpets they are, the more they're trapping allergens, as well as the seams come up, it becomes a safety issue for our students. We'd like to replace the carpets there. Our estimate at this time to replace the carpet throughout the school site is $290,000. Again, we'd like to utilize LCAP funds under the well-maintained and physically safe facilities for all students. Over Romoland Elementary, the front parking lot, you can see that some of the old striping is coming through and is faded. And so that would just be a slurry and restripe of the front parking lot over there. There are some cracks as well. So we'd like to slurry and restripe that at a cost of about $15,000 utilizing LCAP funds. That specific parking lot, John? 2.5 years.
And what I would like to remind the board is many of these bigger projects, the board asked us a few years ago wisely to develop a maintenance plan for things like carpet and roofing and those bigger ticket items. And so Mr. Parham had developed a rotation so that we're not, falling to such a level that we can't really generate the funds to fix these drastic repairs. And, I honestly, I quizzed him about Mesa View. I'm like, that's a new school, but that school is how old now? 17 years?
14 years old.
14 years old, which in my mind doesn't register, but it's been around for 14 years. And so the one area we actually had Chase to be painted next summer, not this coming summer, but because we've been able to offset some money with some one-time funding, we feel, and it's really a need this summer, if you've seen the campus. We feel like we can get them both done now, and it would be more economical to do now rather than Boulder Ridge this summer and Chase next summer. And he'll talk a little bit about some of this one-time funding as well.
So I have a question about the Chase painting as well. Just, I suppose you should go to the podium. I don't know. My question is, and it would be good to get on audio. With Chase, how old of a building do we have there? Is it less than 10 years, right? All right. So when we paint buildings, how long have you seen in your career? How long should that paint last? Was that just a bad paint job, or is that normal wear and tear on a normal building?
In my opinion, Ms. Kleiss, it was the prep work wasn't sufficient.
Prep
that type of thing.
before the painting.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you go to or have this repainted, that prep work will be done. It should last
It'll be
us
done
longer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it should have been at least a 10 to 12, I mean, up to a 15 year on some of these buildings.
Right. And what year are we at now with Chase? Do we know?
Ace was 2000.
It's older. I mean, newer, I mean. About 8 years?
I think we're at 8, yes.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
13, 14 year, I think is. when-
So this new paint job should last us a little longer than the 8 years.
Yeah, one of the challenges, which it has a unique finish on it, the exterior, I think they call it, did you say it was a Santa Barbara
Santa
finish at
Barbara
one point? And it's, I don't know, it feels porous and it doesn't feel like kind of your typical paint job on a school. And I think getting our typical paint job on a school will also help with the longevity of the paint job
Okay.
moving forward.
I mean, I'm okay with it. I just was really surprised that all of a sudden, I'm thankful really for these pictures, guys. That was very helpful to get us to understand exactly what needs to be done.
No, they're actually gonna paint it, Mr. Sperry, that they, right now, the Santa Barbara finish is almost like a smooth, hard trowel finish as opposed to a shot on stucco like Boulder Ridge is. So I'm concerned that the prep work prior to that, and I think that, so it's not gonna be a fog coat because it's already been painted and you can't fog over paint. 'cause it's
Yes,
sealed in.
yes, yes, I didn't.
It was just straight stucco, you could actually fog, but this would actually be a paint. I actually had mandatory job walks last week for both schools, and they bid on the 19th. So we'll have firm prices for you on the 19th or the 20th after the bid openings, and then we can
Okay.
decide from then.
Yeah, who knows what they're coming in now?
In their bid, then they describe specifically what they will do.
I specified what, yeah.
You specified already. Okay, good.
Yeah, we have a full set of specs. It's a district standard that we use, that's what we used over at Harvest Valley. We just got done painting that over winter break. So it'll be the same product.
Harvest Valley is another one. It seems like we painted a lot. I don't know. The years just kind of blend together.
All right, so then some of the other projects that we're working on, Harvest Valley Elementary is adding preschool classrooms and an additional restroom. The new classrooms are being paid for through a early childhood grant at the $500,000. And the restrooms are going to be about $300,000, but those were actually part of a prior LCAP. The project got delayed because of COVID. You can see just in general relation to the overall the southern part of the campus. On the left-hand side there at the end of the current row of portables will be the new restroom. And then over on the other side will be the new portable classroom building. Those are all the projects that we're looking at, but then we do have some other items we wanted to bring forward. This is at Harvest Valley. So a question had been asked previously about the age of some of the portables over there. So we were able to check with our architect firm, and we have portables over there from as old as 1975, which it predates the school. So the assumption there is that they were transferred either from Romoland Elementary or from another site. So we asked for a couple of different options in regards to replacing those older portables. This first drawing, this is taking out the 7 oldest ones that are marked there in red and replacing them with just new portables. The expected price for that is about 1.2 million. Then we have some options. So this is kind of reconfiguring the school site. This would demolish 7 of those old buildings and then purchasing 7 new buildings and relocating 3 of the other buildings up there to make 2 rows with a little bit of a courtyard. And that would be 2.6 million is the estimate for that.
And that,
I had a
I'll
question.
kind of, oh, go ahead, Ms. Moon.
I'm sorry, Mr. Payton. Is this also incorporating, I remember faculty or teachers at Harvest saying they had to walk, far to get it on campus. Is this going to incorporate another entrance so those that are working on one side don't have to go all the way to the front to get in? Does anybody else recall this? It was brought up in a board meeting.
Yeah, I believe there is a gate currently there. I'd have to check with the principal. I think that gate has been closed under the COVID era because we want to monitor people as they come on campus and do our checks.
Okay.
But there is an entrance point on that side of the campus.
Post-COVID, it's open again?
One of the things on this configuration to note just for the board is that would extend out into their green space a little bit. And so they all have their pros and cons, I guess, both in terms of configuration, but also in terms of price.
Not specifically. We just asked for a few different options in terms of. Sure. So then the next option would be demolishing the 7 existing portables, and it would actually be replaced with a new 10 classroom permanent building. So this one comes in quite a bit higher at 8.8 million for the permanent building. And then the fourth option that we looked at was a 2-story building, demolition of the 7 existing buildings and the addition of a new 2-story, 10 classroom building, which would be about $11.4 million. So we just want to bring back some options to replace those older portables at Harvest Valley.
Well, I have a question. For Harvest Valley earlier, we were talking about the blacktop where the basketball courts is. Is that the one that's getting replaced?
It would be that basketball court in the northern part of the campus there on the left-hand side. So that's where it would be, yes, potentially,
where those classrooms are, correct?
where they would be
See
moved.
the blacktop area next to where that new building in orange is located, that narrow strip? That's currently the blacktop area. And see how it goes in a little bit as well? It goes in like this here. And I think this is a blacktop, but that might be a classroom. So it's this area. Right there.
So then would it need, or how soon, if we were to do something like this, how soon would that be?
Well, I think that would be up to the board and basically our finances. We were asked to investigate options for Harvest. So we've been working with our architect firm, and that's why you have different configurations at different price points, because at some point resources will come into play in this as well. It's worth noting also that Harvest Valley currently has, Mr. Parham, correct me if I'm wrong, but we think they have room for the addition of 3 additional portables on their campus with vacant spots that are currently there. Like they have a garden, a teacher maintained actually who no longer works in the district. And then there's another area on the opposite side of campus. It's kind of looks like a Zen garden is what I would describe it as at one point, that we could fit a couple of portables to. In terms of growth, I'm talking about for the school, if we were to grow in the future. And so these were the 3 options that we worked with our architects on. And talking with the current principal, the current configuration of those portables is not an impediment to anything on the campus. Just so the board is informed of that as well. And so I think, we wouldn't be looking at doing this project this summer. It would be something that we would come back to the board with next school year. And if the board decided to take action, we would probably be looking at, a summer, next summer, not this coming summer.
So when would they start gathering bids on this stuff? Immediately or? Okay. The reason why I'm asking this question is, because we're all aware of the of building pricing, and a lot of these bids are good they're given 2-3 week bids on these things. Depending on, and it depends on what material obviously we're using too. Some are more impacted than others. Just watching things, and I'm sure I'm just kind of preaching to the choir here. They're expecting a crash in the building supplies. The supplies are going to catch up, and there's going to be a surplus. I don't know when it is. Could be 6 months from now. Could be 3 months. I don't know. But the way things are going up and the way bids are running, as 2-3 week guarantees on bids. Even less in some cases. I'm worried about getting locked into a bid today. You know what I mean?
Well, we could actually, we specify in our bid documents, the time period that they have to guarantee their price for.
Okay.
So if we say it's a 90-day guarantee that whatever they submit to us, if they have to figure a buffer into their price, they will. But if we say that we're going to award this project within 90 days, and then if we don't, then they're off the hook on that.
Okay. So I'm thinking we're watching pricing, and it's significant. We got significant pricing. Bids can actually change, 10-15%, I would imagine, overall with the material costs if they do start getting back to what we expect them to be.
The first thing, Mr. Sperry, that we would have to figure out is what the board's,
Yeah.
like Mr. Payton had mentioned, replacing the 7 oldest ones.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
Financially will
understand.
be-
I understand that. That's a general question. We're talking about slurry, paint and all kinds of stuff. I know the paint hasn't really been hit, pricing on paints haven't been hit bad. So, I mean, that bid probably won't really vary much unless something crazy goes out, but
I think
some of these other things, I just worry about getting tied into a higher bid than necessary. If we have the flexibility to watch the market pricing. Does that make sense or am I out of line saying something like that?
I don't know.
I mean,
I think our intent for today
okay.
was to bring back, first of all, the age of the portables
Yeah.
and going back, because that was a request, and then some potential solutions for replacement
Correct.
of those most aged portables. And I think they range from, I think the earliest day he mentioned was 75, and I think the 7, maybe they go through the early 80s, maybe the mid 80s, if I remember.
Yeah, that's old. They're old.
And so really, for today's information, it was really just to update the board on the work we've been doing to try to explore options. But I think we've had conversations in the past about our future facility needs and the challenges we face with those as well, right? In terms of resources to get those. So that's the important part of the different options that we have. And if there's even some direction where we can eliminate an option or two, so we're not spending our time on things that probably aren't going to come to fruition due to resources, then it would help narrow our focus on our work so that when we bring something back to the board, it's more meaningful. But again, we'll wait for feedback from the board on what you guys would like us to explore as well.
Okay. I'm just a little above the questioning.
We have more questions though, because I know Mr. Reller's over there writing as well. I'm not really content with some knowledge here. I just need more information. We're looking at that first map and the red ones I know were 1975-ish, but then you've got the pink ones. How old are those pink ones? Or whatever color that is, orange. Those 3, the remaining 3 in that row.
They go into the late 90s, early 2000.
What's
They're
25?
around, it's right around 20 now,
20?
what they're saying.
So those are possibly going to be going out the door really soon too, depending on when we move on something like this. And those portals down, guys, by the basketball court, how old are those? I know they're not as old as 1975, but how old are those portables as well? Because you had some people come out and give us the age.
Sure. Late 90s, 98.
About 98?
What we've been told is in that row of portables, the
Yeah.
oldest ones are near the center. It was like they were put in the center and they kind of got over time got built
Right.
out in both directions.
Mhm.
So I think the further out you go, the newer the portables you'll find, which is why those ones on the end near the basketball courts and on the opposite end are orange versus
Uh-huh.
red. They were the latest additions.
Not that I always agree with portables, but I'd kind of like to find out how much it would cost to, you said demolition of the 7 existing portables. Why not, let's just shoot for the moon and let's figure out, take those orange ones out along with it. And what would that cost, right? Additional 3 to the 1.2 million. And then also the ones at the bottom, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just let's really reach for the stars and see what that would be to replace all of those portables. And with facilities, since we're having an increase in enrollment, and I know right across the street from my house, there's going to be 33 homes being built out in the next 3 years. It was a big surprise to me. But anyway, that's going to go to Harvest. And I know it's not a huge amount of kids, but we don't know that. So let's reach for the stars and just figure how much that would cost just with portables. And then the other question I have is, you said on the next one with the 2.6 million, you said the demolition of 7 existing buildings. Those new buildings, are you thinking with that stick built? Is that stick built? Meaning, with wood and
There'll be portables.
no, they'd be portables as well.
It's just a reconfiguration of
Just a
the new
reconfiguration.
portables rather than a
Okay.
straight line.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and then
That,
the
okay.
moving of the other 3 buildings.
All right. That answers my question on that. And hold on, I have another, oh, I know, the 2-story that you're talking about, the 10, what was, is that stick built or are those are stick built? Those aren't portable,
That's
stack
a
and portable?
permanent building.
Permanent. Okay. So permanent means permanent, not 25 years. Got it.
I think the last 2 options, Mr. Bacon, can you go back to I think that option right there?
Uh-huh.
That is a similar configuration to the portable one we just looked at, but they're permanent classrooms instead of portables.
Oh, those
So
aren't,
it takes it from 2.4 to 8.8 million.
okay. So,
But that would be a permanent
so there's-
classroom versus portables in that configuration.
okay, concrete, everything. Okay, good.
And then the next one was just a 2-story option, just to try to decrease the footprint potentially, right?
Right.
On the campus by building up versus
Right. No,
out.
I know. That's awesome, but
And for clarification, Ms. Kleitz, were you referring to the portables at the bottom of that screen
Yes.
down there?
yes.
Okay.
Let's just see. I don't know if you get more bang for your buck when you have more portables. I have no idea.
There's 17 altogether. Then
Yes, let's just see. Because those are going to be reaching their capacity by the time we get done talking about this and something's probably actually done. And I've been in those portables year after year. And I think the first year I was on the board back in 2005, they stunk then. And I've been squawking about it since. But anyway, thank you.
And I had a question, Trevor. For this, say 11.4 million, would that come out of a fund similar to what the new K-8 school that we wanted to build also on the other side?
Well, as it stands right now, yes, more than likely. We don't know, what the future may hold in the next year, but yeah, that's an important conversation we've previously shared our current facility reserves and what I think Mr. Bacon shared how much revenue we expect to generate over the next 5 years via CFDs, developer fees, those kinds of things. This basically project at this point would come out of those facilities monies to complete it, which moves us a little further away from that K-8 school. So that's where the balance has to come in about where we see our needs.
Okay, thank you.
My turn. So I think Ms. Kleitz brought up a very good point. We need to really look at what the development looks like in our area before we spend millions of dollars on removing old portables and bringing in new portables. Not only with the development across the street from Ms. Kleitz's house, but also maybe, I don't know what the progress is on the property Briggs and Mapes to the north. That's been there for years. There's been a plan, but I don't know. I don't know. I know this is not in the scope of this presentation, but I think we should really start looking at that and see how we can harness the space available at Harvest Valley and look to the future. And because I would hate to get rid of 7 old portables and bring in more portables and then have to bring in more portables because we have the need when we could have just waited just a little bit longer and had a great plan for when this happens, we're able to build a new building there, maybe a 2-story, maybe a couple of 2 stories. I don't know, but I'd hate to spend the money on portables when we potentially would need a much larger facility without building a new school. If it comes down to, we're going to remove those portables because that's the best option for us because of the information that we have, then that's it. But I just want to make sure we're thinking way ahead and multiple options. We've done that for the past 20 years with respect to our school construction, and we fared fairly well. And so that's what I would like to see before we make that decision. I know that it's not the scope of your presentation tonight. I do appreciate all the work that we're doing to maintain our buildings because for how many years when the budget crisis, we didn't have the money. And now we're setting it aside and we're making sure we're funding those things and you know, just got to keep them up because we can't afford to build new ones or keep replacing wings and this and that. So I just want to look at the bigger picture. And I know it wasn't part of this presentation, but something that we need to think about.
You know, Mr. Riller, that's a really good idea to take, let's just say Harvest Valley and the attendance boundaries of Harvest Valley, and maybe do some research on not only that development that's going across the street from my house, might repeat that for the third time, but where are we at with the other developments? And are they, you know, what do we have to look? I know we've talked a little bit about it, but yeah, maybe do some more research on that, see what we come up with.
I think there's another variable also, which yes, the developments are absolutely important in terms of all of our schools' attendance boundaries, so we know what's going on. And he's done a good job at working with the city of Menifee and Riverside County and some of the unincorporated areas as well. The other challenge is as our attendance boundaries exist today, may not be that way in the future if it necessitates a change because of growth, and we have to do some adjustments here and there. But we can only react with what we know at the given time, right? And so, you know, housing is so unpredictable with how fast they get built or if they're slow down. I think this district, even with the last housing kind of crisis of 2008, they still saw growth because in relation to surrounding counties and things, it's still an affordable place to buy a home. And so that helps us weather some storms that may be coming potentially versus, you know, San Diego County or Orange County and the home prices there compared to our county. So absolutely. We just wanted to update the board on the work that we've been done and get some feedback, which we appreciate, so that we know how to cater when we come back to you guys in the fall sometime.
Then in February, we discussed the addition of portables at Boulder Ridge Elementary. Boulder Ridge Elementary was the only site that didn't have portables. And so we looked at the plans and there was plans already to have space for 8 new portables. And so with that idea that we potentially need to add portables at Boulder Ridge Elementary next summer to accommodate the growth over there, we applied to be able to utilize again some of the ESSER funds to offset the cost as a means of keeping students socially distant and separating them. And we were approved for that. So that's $2 million potentially that we'd be able to spend towards that project that wouldn't impact the general fund. Very fortunate to get that approval.
That's creative thinking.
Thank you.
I have to give him a shout out for that because that is, it took a special application to do that. And that and the energy management system, you know, anything we can save from the general fund in terms of facilities, knowing what our next few years is going to look like is a tremendous benefit to the district. So.
That was the presentation. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you.
We now move on to the LCAP 2021-2022 presentation. Dr. Wise.
Right, good evening, Board President Aguirre, Board of Trustees, and members of Cabinet. This evening, I am sharing with you information about the LCAP, the Local Control and Accountability Plan for 2021-22, including our stakeholder engagement process and proposed strategic actions for the new plan. Next slide. Local control and accountability plans were implemented in California school districts in 2014 as a result of the school funding shift to local control funding formulas in 2013. LCAPs are educational equity plans that are focused on these 8 state priority areas that encompass the whole child: student achievement, course access, state standards, basic services, school climate, student engagement, parent and guardian involvement, and other student outcomes. We are entering our third LCAP cycle, and next school year will be the first of a new 3-year LCAP implementation. So we're going to quickly review the past, what we've implemented so far through our past LCAP cycle. Next slide. So our LCAP Goal 1 has been to provide a rigorous and enriched academic foundation to meet the demands of college and career readiness. On this slide, you see some of the highlights of what we've implemented in Romoland through our past 2 LCAP cycles, and it has resulted in success, with our district being one of the top academic growth districts on state assessments and English learner reclassification in Riverside County. Next slide. LCAP Goal 2 has been to provide safe and engaging learning environments that support the culturally diverse social, emotional, and physical development for all our students. This district, this board has invested in so many items, as you see on this slide, and growing, perhaps like our school counseling program from 1 counselor 7 years ago to now having 6 school counselors, ensuring every school has a full-time counselor, 2 at the middle school. Then adding to that by adding 2 school-based mental health therapists. And there has also been investment, vast investment in enrichment for students with a large menu of middle school elective courses for our middle schoolers, field trips for all students, technology devices for all students, elementary music and PE programs, and so much more. As mentioned earlier, this has resulted in our schools being recognized as model SARB schools for student attendance, as well as a recent RAMP School Award for school counseling at Harvest Valley Elementary School. Next slide. We just heard a lot about safety and facilities, but LCAP Goal 3 has been to provide physically safe and well-maintained facilities for all students. The modernization of Romoland Elementary School was an important step with facilities equity. Your conversation just recently about Harvest Valley a few minutes ago, also about facilities equity. There were also many safety improvements to schools and emergency preparedness items that have occurred over our past 2 LCAP windows, if you will. And we've added classrooms at multiple schools because we're growing. Our district is growing and there is a need. Next slide. And then for this year, there was this unique plan you approved earlier in the year, a 1-year plan called the Learning Continuity Plan. And this is just a review of what we implemented. And you'll hear about some of these items later on because stakeholders have liked these new implementations and are reporting a need, an ongoing desire to continue some of these items. So in response to COVID-19 and virtual learning, we implemented the Learning Continuity Plan, added these key actions and resources, such as last summer, we offered a summer virtual learning program to all students. Any student who wanted to enroll could enroll. We increased the technology devices and Wi-Fi hotspots to ensure one-to-one for every grade level. We added instructional tools that teachers requested, Nearpod, Go Formative, and Go Guardian. And we offered virtual tutoring with FEV tutoring to all our students, and they've used over 5,000 hours of tutoring to date. Parasolis was added to support student and staff mental health, and our schools were made COVID safe with safety and cleaning protocols and PPE, which has gotten us to this point, being open 4 days a week for students on campus. And now we turn to what we did to gain stakeholder input to develop the next 3-year LCAP plan. We've engaged our community of stakeholders in various ways. We had 28 virtual stakeholder sessions between January and April of this year. We asked stakeholder groups to consider and give input on what has worked well, particularly in this last year for our students, when we were forced to innovate, what has worked well from that, and what needs to be grown or improved to continue to serve students well and better. Each school had a student focus group in which students were asked to give their feedback about what's working for them and what we can continue to improve. Each school also had an LCAP and site plan SIPSA team made up of multiple stakeholders: teachers, parents, guardians, classified staff, school and district administrators, union leaders. And they also gave feedback Each of those school teams and the early childhood programs team met 3 times. We then had a district LCAP team made up of all those different stakeholder groups. They met 3 times. We also had a district advisory DAC-DLAC group meet, as well as the budget advisory committee. So it was a robust process to get input and look for trends and themes, to talk about needs, to talk about what's working, what we want to continue implementing to serve our community well. Next slide. And these were themes that emerged from those 28 sessions. In academic achievement, personalized learning, small group instruction, reading and math supports, and inclusive practices. With engagement and climate, so student engagement and school climate, the themes that emerged are social emotional connections and opportunities for students, expanding extracurricular activities for students and opportunities, continuing and increasing mental health support for our students, and parent-guardian communication and outreach. There's been such positivity in that this year with ways that virtual and technology have helped parents to engage with our school staff, that people want to see that continued next year and beyond. And with safety and facilities, the themes emerged around district growth, facility space, as we've discussed tonight, COVID safety, and general student safety. Next. We also put out an LCAP community input survey through Thought Exchange, and 6 top themes emerged. They're very much in alignment with the stakeholder group session themes, which is our community of parents, guardians, and staff on this survey reported campus health and safety as a top priority, continuing successful previous LCAP actions such as school counseling, students' social emotional well-being and feelings of safety at school is very important to our community, as well as students' mental health. And this came straight from the mouth of babes. The children said this, and many stakeholders said this. Extracurricular opportunities, continuing to expand sports, clubs, leadership opportunities, and enrichment for the students. And also academic support, so our students' learning can be accelerated across core subject areas, particularly reading and math. And so that takes us now to propose strategic actions for the new 3-year LCAP. So in the area of Goal 1, academic achievement, the proposed strategic actions are in alignment with the themes noted to formally adopt our next generation science standard units of study that have been created, to make a formal adoption of those, to do a social science adoption at the middle school for grades 6 through 8, and the following year to do a math textbook adoption for elementary school. Please note that middle school had a math adoption 2 years ago. Provide professional development ongoing for the Orton-Gillingham dyslexia methods. We are pleased to be one of the few districts that has embarked upon the goal of 100% of our elementary teachers, special ed teachers, and language arts teachers at the middle school being trained in the gold standard of dyslexia methodology, Orton-Gillingham. 70% of our teachers are trained in that already. And we want to continue, so the final 30% can receive training, and the original 70% can have refresher training to develop the skills of reading specialists in all our teachers. All our classrooms have students with the need of literacy development and support. Also supporting professional development and universal design for learning, which supports inclusion and personalized learning methods. Transitioning the coaches we've had, which were content-based coaches, to school site-based instructional coaches to support the implementation of personalized learning at our school sites. To continue with instructional resources that teachers have expressed they like and use and that students respond to, Go Formative, Nearpod, and Go Guardian. To continue offering tutoring services, both at the school site with staff teaching tutoring after school, but also with our virtual tutoring service that we've offered this year. To continue that and to increase bilingual aid support for English learner students and ensure that that happens at all our schools. Next slide. For goal 2, engagement and climate, the proposed strategic actions.
Could we ask questions after each goal?
Sure.
So I'd like to, in March, we had a nice presentation on personalized learning or equity, which I call equity. And I'm glad that it's an important theme in our LCAP. So I want to know a little bit more about the transition to site-based instructional coaches to support implementation of personalized learning or equity for all. So what is this model going to look at? And is it going to be elementary and middle? Is each school site going to be staffed with a particular battery of coaches, et cetera? And then while you're working on that, interested in knowing a little bit more about the tutoring services, not the online stuff, about what's going to happen at the school site, and a little bit about how our after-school program can play a role in it. I can't recall 100% if every one of our schools has a free after-school program, which includes tutoring, et cetera. So talk a little bit about those things.
Start with the after-school program because that's most fresh in what you just said. So 2 of our schools, Romoland and Harvest Valley, have a grant-based program for free after-school program. 3 of our schools have after-school program, fee payer-based program. And so all schools have an after-school program. And those do support academic standards. The folks who work in those programs.
So how do we, just my experience, how do we get free after-school programs for all of our kids? What do we have to do to make that happen? Because we are district-wide, what is our free and reduced lunch?
75%.
What is it?
75.
Okay, so we don't qualify district-wide for some sort of grant for free and reduced lunch or free after-school programs?
We apply for different schools, but we don't qualify for 3 of our schools because Harvest Valley has our highest poverty rate, so it's qualified. Romoland has the 2nd highest poverty rate, and so it qualified. And when we've tried to apply for schools that are closer to 75%, like Ethan A. Chase and Boulder Ridge, they are rejected by the state. The state claims to have many schools above, so to speak, in the higher poverty range that receive the grant through the ACES grant.
So how do we build into our LCAP the ability to have free self-sustaining after-school programs for our kids at every single one of our schools?
We build it in.
I know that's a lot of money, but how do we make it self-sustaining for the long run? I'm not going to say we can do it next year, but I don't know how we do it.
I'll add a couple of things to that. So on the notion of why we don't have free at all of our schools, the state has a certain amount of money and then they work their way down to the free and reduced percentage, and that can fluctuate from year to year. But it's never gone down low enough to hit our 3 other schools before the money is exhausted at the state level. That's why it's not at our other schools. We have tried. The other thing is we have offered a fee-based program that really pays for the staff at those schools so that we can offer an after-school program. And then in terms of being able to offer a free program, it would really be absorbing the cost of those staff members through district funds versus the parents having a fee associated with it. But I don't know if that's necessarily sustainable for the long term. We would have to do an analysis of that, right, to determine the feasibility of that. And it may be a blend potentially, right? Or it could be that we scholarship some kids in need or things of that nature. So we could do a deeper analysis of that.
So if we use some of this government money that we're getting, this one-time stuff that we can spend into 2023, I think 2023, how can we harness some of those resources, pay for the after-school program, but at the same time, start building a fund that will build momentum to be able to make this sustainable for a long period of time? Because the schools that don't have an after-school program, what do our kids do after school? They go home and are in the neighborhoods, and their parents are probably still at work because everybody's got to work. I would think this would be a great opportunity to use some of our one-time COVID monies to try to build a program. Not saying that we can actually do it, but it has to be sustainable. Because after 2 years and we cancel it, that's not going to look good for our community. It's not going to help our community. We need to think about a long-term strategy and find out how we can make that an option.
That's a good, we've done that in other areas, so I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Eller, because some of the things that maybe have been traditional district expenses in some form or another, we can get a temporary reprieve by offsetting some of those costs with one-time money that's allocated for those same purposes. But we're also have to be very careful because in 2 years, when that one-time money is gone, and some of them expire before that, they all have their own little different timelines. We have to then be able to sustain whatever we've done and put it back into whatever our district expenditures are so that we don't lose the service.
Right.
We've been looking at that in a lot of areas, and I think this is another area for us to explore moving forward as well.
And if we can't do it, we can't do it. But I think this is a great opportunity to start looking at that and potentially use some of these one-time monies that we're getting to start getting that pot. I know there's supplanting and supplementing and stuff like that as we get farther down the road, but I don't know. And then so talk a little bit about the tutoring.
Sure. So tutoring, in our past LCAPs, we have provided tutoring funds to our school sites to create their own programs of tutoring at their school sites. So that has been happening. This year, we added the SEV virtual tutoring and made it available to any student at any grade level. It is more difficult for primary age children. Kinder, first, second, makes sense. They would need the parent, with them to engage. An analysis of the grade level engagement, it's really robust 3rd through 8th grade. And so that definitely came back as a trend from our stakeholders to continue that. And so what's nice is having 2 different tutoring options rather than just one, right? For different kids who have different learning needs. And so there are many kids who chose the FEV virtual tutoring and found it beneficial. And there are other kids who need more of the in-person live from their teacher or another staff member at the school site.
So how do site principals access this LCAP money for tutoring? Is it an allocation from the district?
Correct.
And say, hey, here you go, use it as you see fit. If you want to supplement it using your own discretionary, they can do that.
Yes.
Or if they build it into their SIPSA, they can use Title I funds.
Yep, that's what they do.
Okay.
Exactly that.
Okay, so the bilingual aid, what is our allocation to our sites for bilingual aids? Are we paying for those from a district perspective? Or do sites have to use their Title I to pay for those?
Those are paid for by the district.
By their SIPSA? No, are we
No.
paying it out of LCAP?
It's been an LCAP. And this would propose a doubling to that to improve service to kids, to have more aids based on a ratio based on how many English learners are at the school site.
So how many does Ethan A. Chase have right now?
Ethan has 1, and this new ratio would give them 3.
Oh, sweet.
So one of the things that we've
I
engaged,
like that.
one of the things we've engaged in is trying to develop formulas and ratios for these supports for kids so that it's not subjective any longer, right?
Yeah.
And so we did an analysis and we basically are trying to fill in the gap. So we've developed a formula based on the amount of English learners at a school. So obviously the schools with higher amounts of English learners will have more bilingual aids versus a school that has a low amount of English learners. But they have a greater need, obviously, for those aids with the amount of students, if they have a significant amount of students. And so it's really time for us to develop that robust sound system so that, we've decreased from 950 English learners. I'm going to go back a few weeks now to about 450 district-wide over the last 8 years. 550 because of our redesignation rates. And so that's been a success for us. But We also still have to figure out how to provide additional supports to these 550 that are still there, or that are newcomers into the country that we get potentially as well.
Yeah, if you're using that formula and it gives Chase 3, 1 per grade level, that's nice. Yeah.
You're welcome. Ready for goal 2? Okay. So in the area of student engagement and school climate, proposed actions are increasing the school-based mental health therapist support for this next year, providing board certified behavior analyst, known as BCBA services available to students in need. Sometimes in districts, BCBA services seem to be relegated to students on IEPs or, with special needs. But in this case, this support will be for any student, regardless of having an IEP or 504 plan, that is in need of that support. Professional development in trauma-informed practices was an overwhelming theme from our stakeholders to ensure all staff, not just teaching staff, all staff would receive trauma-informed practices training. Restoring field trips, people are excited about that past the COVID era. Expanding student clubs, sports, and leadership opportunities at all schools. And digital marquees being added at all schools. Continue offering virtual parent guardian meeting and conference opportunities. That has been very convenient for many of our parents to engage regularly and even more regularly with teaching staff. And then offering the PK, the Parent Institute for Quality Education program, at all 5 schools. Ethan Chase has been implementing it regularly. Romoland has implemented it in the past, but this would provide it at all 5 schools for our parents and guardians. I welcome your questions about goal 2.
Just a comment. I just think continuing offering the virtual parent and guardian meetings and conference opportunities, things that we've learned over COVID, that would solve a lot of issues of parents not being able to show up and maybe work up until the last minute and then go into that conference. So that was an excellent suggestion. So.
Is this where music comes into play?
Yes.
Okay.
And ensuring that's ongoing. Our stakeholders did express that.
I like the digital marquees.
It allows messages to be put out in English and Spanish at the front of all our schools, as well as updated more often.
Well, it's important to our community because they drive through other communities, they see these grandiose digital boards and they ask themselves, well, why doesn't my school have one of those? It is a somewhat of a keeping up with the Joneses. However, it's about giving our community access to information in any which way they can get it. Because with our busy lives, not everybody reads their emails, not everybody listens to their phone messages, or even read all their text. So if we can combine all those different mechanisms, plus it shows that we got school spirit and, so I like that.
This was something the board actually approved last LCAP, but when we had to reduce budgets last year, it was one of the things that we decided to delay for a year because of unsure resources at that time. But we're excited about this opportunity as well, because we have a lot of parents that will walk their children to school and, then they get a chance to see those messages and they may not engage electronically at times. So.
Can I ask, are those vandalized often or not?
They're usually high up off the ground, difficult to, we're not, our locations are not the ones that you would see like a low to the ground, more monument style. They're usually elevated up out of reach of people.
Okay. And on the
Correct, Mr. Parham? Is that correct, Mr. Parham? Oh, go ahead, Ms. Moon. Sorry about that.
And on the restoring the field trips, which is great to see, is that going to be offered free to all students, or I think that's how it was in the past? I'm not sure.
Was that the field trips, Ms. Moon, that you mentioned?
Yes.
So the board, I can't remember how many years ago it was, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, asked that we allocate $10 per student So as schools grow, obviously they get a bigger field trip allocation. We're not sure, quite honestly, at this time, what field trips may or may not look like next year. But in the event that we are able to go do field trips, we want the resources there for students. Our schools have come to rely on that. And, they also will do some augmentation of that depending on where they want to go, but it's a great support so that we can ensure that all students get to at least go on a field trip.
Great, thank you.
For students who participate in athletics, do we require them to get a physical?
I'll have to research that. I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't believe so, but I will find out.
Like when we compete against other schools, those teams, I know it's not like PE or murals, we actually leave our school and go and compete. So that's the question. If we do require them to have physicals, I think it would be nice to eliminate that barrier for our kids and provide the physicals ourselves through LCAP. And if we're not requiring physicals, we need to maybe look to see if it's a liability issue, which because these sporting events, I'm sure occur outside the school day.
Yeah, we'll review the requirements for participation in after school athletics. There are a couple of things and we'll share that with the board. Sometimes you can find a local doctor that will contribute their day and come and do the physicals for free. That would even be the best option. But if we can't find that support, then we can look here.
We also have a partnership with Borrego.
Yeah,
Our mobile
I was
health
just gonna say
unit.
Borrego, they come.
They'll be out
Bring-
this month, as a matter of fact. So
There you
look
go.
into that, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for that feedback. Goal 3. So we've addressed some of this earlier with the facilities presentation by Mr. Bacon. Goal 3, the area of safety and facilities, the proposed actions include security cameras at all schools over the course of 3 years. In that 3rd year, 8th and Chase would get a refresh to their security cameras, an upgrade. And then facilities, safety, growth, and equity improvements, as mentioned by Mr. Bacon earlier. Then site funds for individual student instructional supplies. That's a safety element where students wouldn't have to share their supplies. We did that this year with one-time funds. Stakeholders have expressed that would be beneficial going forward. And then COVID safety supplies that are still needed with PPE and other safety cleaning products and such. Questions about goal 3?
On the security cameras, how many cameras is that per and where are the main focuses on those?
I'll let Mr. Payton or Mr. Butler address that.
I'll start, but maybe Mr. Butler can get in position a little bit while I talk. So the plan would be this next year to do 2 elementary schools. In year 2, do the remaining 2 elementary schools. And then by then, Chase's system is going to be, it's pretty dated at that point. And so we would look at refreshing that system in year 3. So over a 3-year period. And Mr. Butler has done a little bit of an analysis on that. So can you share what Mr. Here just?
Would you remind me what your question was?
So like, where's the main focus as far as the cameras, where they're gonna be?
Got it. So basically, we try to design a system to provide some general coverage. So obviously, we want cameras that are going to get good visibility of cars coming in and out of the parking lot, as well as the entrances and exits to the campus. Pretty much all of the cameras are exterior cameras, so they're just getting general areas around campus where students may enter the classroom, where potential vandalism could happen, on the outsides of our classrooms, playgrounds, play areas, things of that nature. We do also put 1 camera in the front office lobby area, just in the event that we may have an incident or something. Not that that's something that has happened, but we want to, be better safe than sorry.
We try to focus on the areas where students congregate the most.
Correct.
So where they tend to be groups of kids.
Yeah, and I would say even all of the cameras are in locations where, like Mr. Payton said, where students are gathering, where there could be concerns about safety. We don't tend to put cameras in areas where people aren't going to be. So it's not going to cover every single square inch of campus. It's going to be focusing on areas where it would be most likely to be needed. Correct. You're welcome.
In the April 30th communication corner that we get from you, Trevor, you highlighted you met with the new Menifee Police Department. How is that going to affect our SRO program, or are they going to be providing the SRO for us? Are we going to work with them? Or how, I know the county sheriff has helped in the past. How's that relationship? What is,
So that was one of the questions I had for him, because all of our schools are in the city of Menifee, but maybe not all of our residents are in the city of Menifee. And so the feedback we received was you call them and go through their dispatch, and then they will farm out if it's a sheriff or a Menifee City Police Department issue. More times than not, it's going to be, if it's a school related incident, it's going to be Menifee Police, because our schools are in the city. They are building an SRO program, but it looks different. It's not a dedicated SRO for a school site, but they have people that they are training so that they can respond when schools have needs. And they are trained in dealing with, school age children versus typical law enforcement. And so, that they plan on growing that program over the next few years, but they do have a plan to support schools from the get-go, but with also plans to grow it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. absolutely. And I had a conversation with Trevor the other day about our schools and our safety, and we focus an awful lot on social emotional learning and providing personalized services in academics as well as emotional needs. But there are some times where our students might lash out towards other students or adults on campus. And specifically, I asked about how do we respond when a student threatens a staff member, whether it's an implied threat or a specific threat. And I wanted to make sure that our sites have the ability to utilize our progressive discipline plan to provide consequences for those actions that can potentially lead up to them not being at that school site anymore. Because it's something that our kids and our staff need to know 100% that we support their safety. And sure, yes, kids make mistakes, but we have to make sure that we're providing not only consequences, but support for them as well, to ensure that they understand and know that, hey, this is an inappropriate behavior. We need to look for a potential alternative placement for you because you made a threat towards one of our staff members. Thank you.
Next slide. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the braiding of funds. You saw this in the facilities presentation earlier when different funding sources were being mentioned to complete different projects. And so we've been given the expanded learning opportunities funding, provided we have an approved grant plan, which is on the board agenda this evening. And you'll notice that some of the items in that grant are items I've mentioned as part of the LCAP. And that's because the LCAP reflects multiple funding sources. And we want to strategically use those funding sources as we can to provide services that meet a need for our students based on stakeholder feedback. And so I've mentioned some of these already, but the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant is about meeting its state funding to meet the needs of our students in response to their year of virtual learning and COVID. And these funds must be spent by August 2022. We have 14 months. So what can we do in this first year of LCAP plan with these funds? And this is our plan for that. So offering the in-person summer learning program for this summer and next summer, open to any student in our district who wants or needs to register. Increasing those bilingual instructional aids like we talked about earlier. we can use this one-time funding for next year to support that increase. Offering again the virtual tutoring services, virtual program offering. So that one, the virtual program offering, is for families who still want that option going into next year for COVID safety as a reason, but also for their students' learning style as a reason, a family choice. And then increasing the school-based mental health therapist services, as we discussed earlier, providing the BCBA services, that staff professional development, those 3 areas I mentioned earlier, and then offering the PK parent guardian program at all schools. That's a unique way to braid the funds with the opportunity of the one-time state funds in our LCAP.
And Mr. Rella, this would be an example of what we spoke of earlier, where we were looking at ways to use one-time money for services, but any of those things, when that money gets exhausted, then we're working on a plan so that if it's a service that we deem that we want to do long-term, that we have the funds to sustain it. And so we'll add the after-school program into that list of things that we're looking at.
And we would look at the ESSER federal funds as well for the 2nd and 3rd year out.
Thank you.
Next slide. And with that, I thank you for hearing the LCAP proposed strategic actions. I welcome any additional comments or questions at this time.
My comment to this whole thing is thank you for breaking it down into the different goals and putting exactly where the money's being dispersed to. And as much as I can understand some of it, there's a few programs I want to ask you about, but I don't want to take time now. But thank you for doing that. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
I agree. I was just going to say the same thing. Very detailed.
Thank you, Ms. Moon. Thank you.
We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are approved in one motion. Do any board members have any comments or questions in regards to the consent agenda?
I have one. I'd like to make a comment, and it's about the exception of donations. I did notice that our COE Foster Youth Services donated 200 science kits worth $3,000 to our foster youth to use. So thank you very much for doing that. And then also the Early Childhood Education Program, Menifee, thank you so much. The cover donated hand sanitizer and childlike masks. Every little bit helps. It was worth $450. So we so appreciate that.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
A motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Reller,
Hi.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Gary, aye. Now I'll move on to the action items. M1, Resolution 18-2020-2021, supporting the application for eligibility determination for the State School Facilities Program, Form Tab 50-03. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. This resolution supports adding me as an authorized district representative for the State Allocation Board for the Office of Public School Construction. Previously, Ms. Cole was unauthorized representative, and so this would allow me to fulfill that role now that she's retired.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll say it.
All in favor, Mr. Reller,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Gary, aye. Now move on to M2, Resolution 19-2020-2021, authorized signature of contracts. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. This resolution comes about as a result of a change in staff at the Department of Public Services for Riverside County. Essentially, we're able to reach out to them to get a list of all of our students that are Medi-Cal eligible, and then we're able to directly certify those students to be eligible for free or reduced price meals. The new person that was reviewing our contract didn't agree that the board had delegated authority for anyone outside of the board to sign contracts, including Mr. Payton. And so we're asking the board to approve this resolution, which will delegate authority to sign contracts to members of cabinet. Ideally, going forward, we would bring this back to the board each December when we do the normal certification of signatures.
Thank you. Any board members have any comments or questions?
I have one question, Mr. Payton. Usually you're the one, I know we have a lot of delegates here in the room and
Sure.
everything, but usually you're the one that would end up signing off on these.
Yeah, some of the, primarily myself and Mr. Bacon, the CBO position has been primarily the two contract signers. Some of the educational support functions or some of the IT functions may default to that cabinet member, but they're all reviewed in cabinet before signatures are put on them.
Okay, all right, just short question.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
A motion?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Eller,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry.
Aye.
And myself, Mr. Aguirre, aye. Moving on to M3, proposal for approval for food service management consultant agreement. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Back at the March board meeting, the board authorized staff to begin the process of soliciting proposals for nutrition management services through our town nutrition department. Historically, we've used Sodexo as the company. We did have two vendors go through the process, Sodexo and a company called Chartwells. And so they had to attend a mandatory tour of one of our school sites at Ethan A. Chase to visit the kitchen there, and then submit a very robust proposal for us to review. We had a 3-person panel that reviewed each of the proposals. And although price is not the deciding factor for a proposal of this type because it's such a specialized service and it's not a bid, price is weighed very heavily. So in reviewing the pricing that was offered, Sodexo had a breakfast price of $1.35. Chartwells had $1.50. For lunch, Sodexo had $1.55. Chartwells had $1.72. For snack, both had 85 cents. And then for supper, Sodexo had $1.55 and Chartwells had $1.72. And then for non-reimbursable meals such as adults or catering, that type of thing, 85 cents. So those are the price per meal. So the total cost for this Sodexo proposal was lower than Chartwells. All things being equal, the two proposals were very close except for that pricing piece. With that in mind, staff would like to request to enter into agreement with Sodexo to continue providing services for our nutrition management services.
Thank you. Any board members have any comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Eller,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Aguirre, aye. Moving on to M4, declaration of need for the 2021-2022 school year. Mr. Murray.
Yes, this is an annual requirement from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing that allows the district to hire teaching staff who are in the process of earning their full credentials. This hiring process is done in the event that the district is unable to identify a qualified staff with the full credential in place, and we can then identify staff who would be on a preliminary internship permit or a short-term instructional permit.
Thank you. Any board members have comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Eller,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Aguirre, aye. M5, approval of memorandums of understanding between the Romoland School District and the Romoland Teachers Association. Mr. Murray.
This is a revision of a current MOU we have with the Romoland Teachers Association outlining the district's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically related to our certificated staff represented by RTA. This is the most recent version of the MOU as we adjusted details to better meet the updated guidance provided by state and local health departments.
Any board members have any comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
We'll have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Reller,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Gary, aye. Moving on to M6, Extended Learning Opportunities Grant Plan. Dr. Wise.
I shared a little bit about the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant Plan earlier. It is a result of California Assembly Bill 86. The grant plan does outline strategic actions and expenditures in the following areas: extending instructional learning time, accelerating progress to close learning gaps, integrated pupil supports, community learning hubs, additional academic services, and training for school staff. Spend those one-time monies by August 2022.
Do any board members have comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Reller,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Gary, aye. Thank you. And now we'll go on to board member closing comments. Mr. Reller,
Nothing at this time.
Mrs. Moon,
Nothing at this time.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Sperry,
No comments.
and myself, no comment for tonight. So this meeting is adjourned at 8:08 p.m. Thank you.